Hi, Tony here again, and I'm with Yves Hanoulle. How are you today, Yves?
I'm great. I'm great. I'm actually really happy to meet you because we've spoken so much over Twitter, LinkedIn, email that it's nice to put a face to a person. Well, actually, a talking face because in all these things there are pictures, but it's different to actually talk to a person than to just see the pictures, of course. So I'm really happy, Tony, to be here.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yes, we have had many dalliances over podcasts and books and emails and backwards and forwards. So it's really good to get you on. What I'd like to do is give just an opportunity for you to introduce yourself, Yves.
So my name is Yves Hanoulle, and I've been working in the agile space for well more than 15 years and doing collaborations, all kind of things. Uh, Most people might know me from Who's Agile, which is a book that I created 10 years ago, and then we spread out to multiple countries. I actually started a version of that just last month, so I'm busy recording also lots of people. um, and yeah, other than that, another thing that many people might know is the Agile coaches. No, how's it called? Agile conferences calendar. So there is a Google Calendar where more than 300 people are actually helping out to spread all the conferences that are happening. It used to be, of course, offline conferences, but these days it's online conferences as well. So there's a lots of things there.
Yes,
So
there's so many of them now, isn't there? So I think it's a brilliant resource, and what we'll do, we'll actually put that in the sleeve notes as well when we send this out. So that'll be really good. Yeah. So you mentioned Who is Agile. I was lucky enough to have been included in the Australian New Zealand version, so very grateful for that. And I think a lot of people do know you for Who is Agile, but I think also one of the great things that you do is it's not the only thing you do a contribution type book, and I'll get you to describe it better than that, where you do get people an opportunity who've not been authors or people who are passionate about a subject to actually contribute to a book. And the one that comes to mind is a little book called, and I'll try and get this up here nice and there we go. Tips from the trenches, agile tip from the trenches. Do you want to talk little bit about that? How that came about, what it is, where it came from?
it's an idea that was more than 5 years in my head, but I was constructing a house, so I tried to pull it off for like no, ignore it. I have to focus. But once the house was built and we moved in, I almost immediately started emailing and asking people. So basically, the idea was that. Um, I like when books have multiple IDs. And so Tips from the Trenches was just asking people, do you have one small tip that you can do? And for me, it was on purpose important to ask both the big names, so-called, because I have indeed some friends that are big agilists, but also just the people, like you say, that you and me, we might know on a project that is kind of hidden, that the people around them know, but are either too shy or not believing in themselves that they're writers, or for whatever reason. And I try to find these people to my network, sometimes actively, well, chasing is maybe a wrong word or a negative word, but actually trying to look for them, and helping them write if it was necessary. But in most cases, it was not even necessary. I received many mails from people saying, "This is a first draft. This is okay," and I was like, "What? This is already perfect. I can just put it in just like that." So yeah, and I gathered 89 people to do that. So 89 people who wrote a tip for that, and that is actually, it took 3 years to do it because I really wanted to have a diverse set of people, and like I said, I needed sometimes to convince people to try it out. And of course, it was in the middle of the pandemic, so everybody had their schedule was completely screwed up. Um, but I'm glad I took the time because I think it's a wonderful thing. I'm still a little bit disappointed about the diversity in the sense that it's too Western, too European, too American. If you ask me, also too white. Working on that for other kind next books that I'm working on, but at least yeah, it's already a lot better than Who's Agile, for example, where because right now it has 50% of the contributors are women, so that's already a lot better. That was a number I was hoping for Who's Agile, and I only succeeded like 30% or something, which was not what I was hoping for. So in that sense, it's already a little bit better.
Yeah, and I love that you care. I love that you care enough to say that you want to improve that and you want to do that. I just might point out to the viewers, the screen's not moving. It's very early it's early in the morning where Yves is, and he's exercising whilst talking to us. So while we got him on, so he's keeping the blood flowing.
Yes, well, exercising. I tried to walk since 2009. I'm trying to actually 2012. What I'm saying, 9 years already. Trying to walk during the day. So if I'm not walking, then I would be going backwards. So
yeah, there we go. Well, yeah, if we suddenly see you go flying backwards, we know what's happened. All right, so it's a really great project, and as I said again, blessed to be part of that, and I think it's some great trips. One of the things that made my heart really warm, though, you did add some people who are no longer with us. Did you want to talk about it? Because I thought that was a lovely touch, and a couple of those people, well, one particularly was close to my heart. But you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I'm not sure the multiple. Well, there's multiple people in there. There's Mike Beadle in there. There's Gene Tebeke in there. There is Jerry Weinberg. Actually, wrote the forward. Actually, he wrote the tip that I turned into a forward, and that was the last conversation I had with him before he died. Yeah. So that's kind. Who else is there? David Hussman is a person that wanted to write the tip, and he apologized multiple times in the last weeks of his life, saying sorry if it won't happen anymore. Yeah, so these are the people that for me were important to add in. All of them were invited. Well, Jean Tebeke, she died earlier, but she was also in some of my previous projects, so she definitely would have been in there. For me, it was important because we're standing on the shoulders of these giants. They helped create the community in multiple ways. So I found it important, even if, like David, who wanted to write the tip and who couldn't, to still have a little piece of text about him and to put their pictures on the cover as well.
Yeah. When I saw them in there, I had such a smile on my face because Jean, I had a lot of opportunity to interact with Jean. We actually had her out to the organisation Australia that I was working with at the time. Such a lovely, giving person who never failed to give you time, no matter what. David, I had the opportunity in a podcast that I work on when I'm not doing this stuff to interview, and at the time he was quite ill, and he was still able to give us his time. And of course, Mike Beadle, well, yeah, that was a terrible thing as well. But I thought it was just a lovely little touch. So if people are thinking about reading that book, look for those because they're quite brilliant. And of course, Jerry Weinberg goes without saying. So that's fantastic. The interesting thing now, though, is that you've got a new one coming out, Yves. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit because I think it's very poignant, given the podcast or the podcast that you're on, all the remote things. Did you want to talk about that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I've actually two projects about remote working going on at this moment. One is about hybrid working, because if you ask around people for hybrid working, if you ask how could I do better hybrid working, the current best answer is don't do it, because it's like we haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
So I started a little Google document with I think about 20 to 30 people already in it, trying to write something. How can we make hybrid meetings better? Because I'm convinced that once COVID is over, or is gone, whatever version of gone means, we'll be in a hybrid world. We will have hybrid meetings. Yes, I agree right now that best answer is don't do it. But when I started in 2004 coaching a team, I had a remote team, almost unpredictable. I was hired to help a local Belgian team, and all of a sudden I was working with people in Yekaterinburg, and it was working. I couldn't understand. I was thinking I was doing something wrong, because I did remote work agile and it was working, and I thought that's not possible. Everybody tells me it cannot go. Um, and I realized, well, the goal is not to, yeah, the goal is actually to make it work. So that's actually a good thing. And what we've learned over the years is that yes, remote is completely different than in person. You have to do all different kind of things, but we can make it work. It will work differently. There's a lot of differences, but there are companies doing great remote work that is nice. It will never be the same as in person, but it will be different, and it will have different advantages. And so that's, I think, kind of where we are today. Most people kind of realize that remote is different, but it's here to stay, and we can make it work. And some people are better at making it work than others, just like some people are good at facilitating an in-person meeting and others are not. So that's just, well, depending on what we worked on. And so I think we can do the same thing for hybrid. So that's why I grouped some people that I thought would be interested in, and some other people have added other people. So that's one project where people think kind of collectively. Not It's not full-time job. Well, all of us, we have jobs. All of us, we do stuff, but it's kind of inspiring. I look at that document probably about once a week, and I see things or edit, and I ask a little more, and I do something. So I'm not really actively doing much more work than adding people, having inspiration. I don't think this will ever be a big book out and whatever. It's more like for the people who are in there, have inspiration themselves. That's my goal. It might grow bigger. I don't know. That's a problem, or that's one of the nice things about a lot of the projects I start. It can stay small, it can grow big. I never know. And then the other one, and that's probably the one you were talking about, is actually a kind of similar version to the tips from the Agile Trenches, which currently the working name is 89 hybrid tips, or remote tips. Depending on how I feel, I write hybrid or remote. But it's about these things, and these are the same thing as with the tips from the Agile Trenches. It's independent people who are writing, well, people who are writing independently a tip. The biggest difference between the previous book and this one is I'm now much more strict on the size. So what I've learned from the previous book, is that if I can ask people to write maximum 600 words, I can get a nice 2-page document in the paper book, because that was actually the first paper book that I've created for myself. Whose Agile was only a digital version. I never intended to make it on paper. The tips from the Agile Trenches I liked so much that I said I definitely want a paper version. It's actually selling quite well on paper, so that's nice. And I realized, some of the tips are like 4 or 5 pages. Others are like, there's actually a one tip in it with one word, which I like as well. So it's a little bit going all over the place. And although I like the complete set, the diversity, I still feel that if it could be more or less 1 or 2 pages for all of the tips, it would be better. So that's an experiment I'm doing with this book. It's like with many of these books, it's growing slowly. Just me emailing to a lot of people, then not hearing much, and all of a sudden now this week I received 4 answers, and well, yeah. So that's it's just ongoing.
That's great, and hopefully as this goes out, that'll help bolster that as well. I'm interested in the word hybrid. Just obviously this is a remote podcast, so we'll do a little bit of talking around the remote stuff as well, which is great. Obviously, remote agility framework, we're in the same frame of thought that this stuff works. You can do it well if you think about how you do it, and you design it purposefully for the context of your organization. But the hybrid word is an interesting word, and I don't know if I'm a fan of it. Like, I've been, like yourself, around doing this a long time and worked with big organizations that were doing this stuff, and we got it to work. I've heard distributed, I've heard remote, I've heard hybrid, but I think the one that I gravitate most to is location agnostic. And the reason I gravitate to that is because I think that's where we're going. I think in the long run, it won't matter whether you're actually in the actual office, but you've got other people who are outside. Because the reality is it hybrid really? Well, the minute somebody's not in the office and you're communicating with them, then it's really remote or it's location agnostic, right? Thoughts?
Yeah, yeah. There's multiple things, and finding the right word is indeed important. The reason I go for hybrid is I find it's more or less the same word in all the languages I know. So that's something I like. Um, Language agnostic. First of all, as a non-native speaker, it's already harder for me to pronounce it, and I might not even be sure what it means. So I actually need, the first time I heard it, I needed to look it up just to make sure that I understood what it. I said language, but of course location agnostic. I needed to look it up. But you see, I already make mistakes using the word, and that's something for me that I care about. There is something that I didn't point out when I said it in the first part. It was for me about that first book was about hybrid meetings, not so much about hybrid working, because hybrid working is the difference. So you could have, or sometimes you work remote, sometimes you work locally, and that for me, yeah, that doesn't really matter much. That feels like, yeah, that's not that hard a problem. The hard problem is doing a meeting where you have some people locally, some people remote, and how you deal with that. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that before we figure it out, we will have 5 more names around how to call it, and it's good. It's good to think about that. I remember when I started working in a remote way, that in a distributed way, and then there were different names for if your team was dispersed, if it was distributed, if it's remote, all these different kind of things. And I'm not sure anymore if I know the correct definitions of all these words, but they made me think really hard. What does it mean? Okay, do I have a local team here and a local team there and we collaborate together, or do we have one team that is in multiple locations? And what if does it mean 2 locations, or does it mean everybody working from home or for working from a cafe or from anywhere? That's the kind of thing. And yeah, there's going to be lots of changes. What I see these days is that a lot more people have almost professional setup at home. So I have lighting in front of me, I have a good camera, I have an extra microphone, stuff like that. But that isn't working well. It's not usable, or not as far as I know, or easy to use it to work in a cafe, for example. I would not take all that gear. So if I want to do that, I need a computer with a better webcam, a microphone, whatever, to work in a different way. If it's working video-wise, of course. If you're working just text-wise, then it doesn't matter. Then you only need a good internet connection, and that's the kind of thing. And also there, I think hybrid could mean different kind of things. Hybrid could mean, okay, we might work with video or with audio, or we might work with text. So there, the word hybrid is a dangerous word to use, because it doesn't make it clear what's the kind of hybrid we're doing. In Belgium, people are talking about hybrid cars who are somewhere between ICE and EVs, so which is, yeah, a different kind of hybrid again. So it's a dangerous word to use. It might, how would I say it? Yeah, it might confuse people. So
yeah, it's going to be interesting. It'll be interesting where we go with that. And that was an interesting point of view. I take on. I'll remember that. It's about the difference in the languages across the chasm as well. So thank you for giving me that one. What I'd like to just take a little sideways now. We talked about your books, but they're not the only books that you write. So I'd like to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about that. And the other thing is you write books with your daughter as well, which I think is astoundingly amazing. I think it's just fantastic. Tell us a little bit about that stuff.
Well, when I started out in the Agile world, at some point I wanted to do an exercise, and I realized that my father had done something similar. So I asked him, and so back in, I think, 2002, 2003, I did the first workshop with my father. That was actually a rather popular one because I did it kind of around the world, which is the leadership game. And that was the first one that I published as a book. Well, I published originally as a PDF on my website, was downloaded lots of things. But that was one of the things that turned into a Leanpub book as well that people can download. It still is one of the more popular ones, and that's one set of books I have, which are the manuals for the workshops that I've done. Which is a nice way. I do a workshop somewhere and people are interested. I can tell them like, look, if you click on this link, you can have the whole description how you do it yourself. Every time I do such a workshop, if it's 6 months ago that I did it the last time, I will just look at the manual myself because it's everything is there how I do it. It has a checklist. What are the material I want to take with me? It is everything I want, yeah, to prepare whatever it's there. So I make that for myself, and so I say, okay, I put it out for the world so other people can do it. These are most of the time not very popular books, but it's just, yeah, it's just extra. It's for other coaches. Um, and at some point, I was doing Coder Dojo, so helping children to learn how to program, things like that. And so my three children, they both participated in that. And at some point, my daughter went to workshop Arduino, that was specially organized for girls. So she went already to the normal Coder Dojo, and then there was one specifically for girls to make a little more publicity. Hey, this is also for girls. And she did an Arduino workshop, and she got really frustrated because she made we think she made a mistake in the first 2-3 minutes, and it took her like a few hours before the end before she could test it and then see, and then it took her like half an hour to find the error, which was actually probably made in the first 2-3 minutes. And so she really, when we drove back, she was really frustrated. And yeah, the exercise is bad, and they should have done it that you try make a small thing in the beginning and you test it out, and then you do another thing. And it was like, wow, this is very agile. And I really like what she explained to me and said, wow, that's actually a very cool and idea. And so she said, yeah, if this is how they should do it. So I wrote to the organization, this is another way how she sees how to do it. So by the next year, they said, well, we're going to do another workshop for girls. Does your daughter want to help out with creating the workshop? And asking that to, I think she was 10 at that time, she was like, yeah, of course I will do it. And with the I would say the brandy and the ego and whatever that a small girl has, like, yeah, of course I can do it. I'll ask a friend, and so she worked on it. It was an existing exercise that is not that hard, that many people can find on the internet, but it was the way she set it up, really like, okay, one small thing, you try something, you go for, and really in a very agile way. And just like with me, so she did everything herself, and the only thing I did is I typed it in and made sure that it was a manual that she could give to the people. First of all, the people who would help her, because she would not be the only one who would do the facilitation. It would have something for her as well, and then we could give to the participants, and that's how it grew. Um, and she talked on a podcast about it from the organization, and they thought it was a physical book, because at that time it was just like with my books, it was just an electronic book. But we drove back, and I could see that she was kind of both puzzled and at the same time like, yeah, a physical book would be cool as well. So I looked a little bit around. I knew that the platform that we were using, Leanpub, was allowing us to publish it as a paper book as well. So I researched that for her book first before I even looked up things like for myself. And so a few months after that, she got a physical book. That's kind of cool.
That is very cool. And as the father of a daughter, you know, I think it's admirable, because, you know, I have a son as well, and often the boys get into the coding and stuff like that, right? But and it just seems to be a natural sort of thing that happens. But it's encouraging the females to get involved. And, you know, like my daughter, you know, when I talk to her about it, she goes, oh, well, no one ever talks to me about it. So, you know, so I think it's it's a really admirable thing that you're doing. And if anybody gets a chance to have a look at some of the stuff that you've done, it's brilliant.
Well, and I see that what you're saying is that indeed, when I was a lead coach for Coder Dojo Ghent, I noticed that many parents would think it would not be for their daughters. I
Yeah.
would literally have a son coming in with a father, and then the daughter standing next to it, and then I would always ask the little girl, "Are you interested?" I would see a smile on her face, like, "Oh, somebody asked me." And the father would be standing behind, would just say like, "No, they're not into that." And I could see the smile dropping on the face, and would ask again, "Are you sure?" Again, a big smile. And the father again, "No, I know my daughter." Again, it's like, "No, look at your daughter." Of course, I didn't want to tell people like, "You're wrong, you don't know your daughter." I just saw her for 10 seconds and I know her better. That would not help them. But it's a story I like to remember people, because I saw it multiple times. And it's about giving that opportunity. And now we're like 4 years later, and my daughter is still into computers. She knows a lot of stuff, but it's not like she's still playing around with Arduino right now. She's like, "No, I have other hobbies, I do a lot of other things." And maybe later she will do something again with Arduino, maybe not, who knows. But it's just about offering these little things, learn it, and show that, hey, you can do something with that or not. And it's what children choose at that time. And it will never force them to use on something. It's like you say, you offer the opportunity, they'll jump for something, and they might jump for something else later on. We'll see.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing I like. It's that opportunity thing, right? And often we don't offer that opportunity in that sphere. So that's why I wanted to talk
Well,
about
I do have to say, I look actively for these kind of opportunities with my children, and that's related to the thing that I did with my father, because I learned so much from it. It was really nice. So I've done talks with actually my 3 children. I had workshops with my 2 children. My daughter joined me to India, where if people look it up, Real Options Agile India, they will find a talk I did with my daughter when she was 12. She didn't have any experience in English. Everything she's using is YouTube English. But yeah, I didn't think, I think even at 18, 19, my English was not as good as she was doing at 12. So it's giving opportunities. They like it, and yeah, it's nice. And I think as parents, that's for me the thing that we can do. Actively looking, and it's for me not much difference than from a Scrum Master. You see people doing something great in a team, you turn up the good, and you make it happen. And that's for me similar what I do with my children.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Look, Eve, we're at the end of our time, so it's been fantastic having you on. And I guess the thing I'd like you to do is, how can people get involved with you? How can they find out about the books? How can they touch base to get involved with the books that you're writing?
Well, I think the easiest way is to find me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. So just first name, last name would work out in both LinkedIn and in Twitter. I do have a nephew that has exact same name. So if on LinkedIn, you might find them first. On Twitter, I don't think he's in. But that's why I usually use first name, last name as a tag together on all social media. So people can find me like that and just ask me. For most of these things, I have a long backlog of people that already are collaborating, but I know my network can always be more diverse. So I really encourage people to talk to me, and yeah, I can see if he can help out for many projects. Because for me, that's how we met, and that's how I like to reconnect and to see people, especially in this pandemic. For me, it feels more like this is how I connect with the world these days.
Yeah, and can I make the point to everyone? It's a very gratifying experience from my point of view. So thank you for that. And the secondary thing that I never thought about would happen was all of the authors that are in that book, I'm actually connected to now. I got requests from them, and I sent requests from them, and all of a sudden I realized I'm connected to all of these people that I'd never met before. So it was a brilliant sharing opportunity. So I recommend that to anybody that's watching this. So.
Yeah, that's one of the things that people sometimes ask me. How do you know all these people? And yeah, it's easy for you to ask people because you know, I don't know, Lisa Atkins, or you know, Lisa Crispin, or Alex Coburn. And for me, a lot of that started because I made these requests. I consider myself not the smartest person there is, so I read a book and I don't might not understand everything, so I'll just try to find an email. And these days with Twitter and LinkedIn, it's much easier. So I will just try to tag these people and get into conversation about, usually about a book or a blog that they wrote, that I said, well, I'm not sure I understand it, and usually I don't. So they explain to me, and but that's a connection, that's a conversation, and that's how I get to know a lot more people. And so it's for me the opposite. Many people think it's easier because you know these people. No, for me it's much easier because I don't know many people, and I reach out, and that's how I get to know more people that are, like you say, are now connecting to each other, which is even better because then I don't have to be the middleman, and now there's conversations going on all around the world that somehow are think people that I'm involved. But for me, it's like, okay, I create a kind of network. I make sure that there are opportunities, and then people take it, and yeah, and some people take them, and others. So there are in the first who's Agile book people who are completely disappeared from the Agile world, and that's fine as well.
Yeah.
It's yeah, that's life.
Thank you very much for spending the time with us. We're at the end of our time. Um, an absolute pleasure to speak and actually see you in the flesh, so to speak. Yves,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
You're welcome, and I hope to actually somehow in the near future, whatever that means, to actually see each other in the flesh. But as long as that's not possible, this is already a nice way as well.